As we see in chapter 5 of your text, during the Roman Empire, the Senate becomes basically a rubber stamp body in the sense that the powers of the Senate, which officially elected magistrates, made laws, exercised judicial functions, were actually an illusion. That the Senate only assented to candidates or laws that were brought before it by the emperor. The emperor was a real power in Roman society. There was opposition to imperial rule. There was power bases and family clans and powerful senators and so forth, but the Roman Senate under the Roman Empire became an illusion. It had no real power. It did not truly rule. But what the Roman people traded for democracy, for relative equality, was power. And in the Roman Empire, they got a whole heck of a lot of it. Augustus Caesar was a very good administrator. He was able to keep the government together, able to keep the empire together. The imperial policy that the Romans developed built upon the Macedonian model in a large part in their own Roman experience, that they combined recognition of local differences with an attempt to unify the empire. So when they conquered people, they would do much like Alexander the Great, Alexander of Macedon did. They would let people keep their own religions and their own gods. And the idea was that we're not going to force people to convert to our religion or culture, but they would spread that Roman culture, which of course was mostly Greek culture. They would spread it through trade, through proximity, and they would even, they would absorb other religions into their own. The best known example of this is the Parthenon in Rome, where all of the gods of all the different people of the Roman Empire were brought into this chamber. And when you came to Rome to see the glory and splendor of the empire and your rulers, you could go there and worship your own gods in the Parthenon, or not the Parthenon, the Pantheon. Pantheon, that's the house of many gods. So it's the Pantheon in Rome, which is of course still there, although the statues of the gods are all gone and the windows, the niches are empty. But the Romans did allow acceptance of cultural tradition. As long as you paid your taxes and your tributes and you sought to become a Roman citizen, as long as you respected the Roman rule, you were pretty much left alone. But of course you had to kick in with tribute and trade and so on and so forth, and of course with military service. So Rome seeks stability, peace, and prosperity above all other values. And under Augustus, Tiberius, Claudius, Vespasian, Titus, the five good emperors, after that, the empire was run very well. And the overweening value of Rome is seen in the phrase Pax Romana, Roman peace. That Roman peace and power and prosperity was kept. That was the overall value. Prestige over actual freedom, I guess. Under Augustus, the army became professional. Men enlisted for 20 years at a time, because they had a lot of people to conquer in that era. Women, during the later years of the Republic and the Empire, became increasingly independent. Women had been freed from their traditional need for guardianship. They become more or less citizens, although not equal, but still more or less citizens. The Roman Empire was astoundingly wealthy and full of literature and architecture and cultural greatness. Augustus was a very important personage, as were all of the Roman emperors. They became the seat of virtue of what it meant to be Roman, even though many of them, like Caligula especially, didn't live up to it, and to varying degrees Tiberius and Claudius didn't either. But nevertheless, these earlier Roman empires are over-idealized compared to some of the later ones like Caligula, who were considered to be pretty bad people. So the first 2 centuries of the Roman Empire are generally considered to be a golden age, but problems did emerge. Government costs kept rising. There were more and more people to fight. The barbarians threatening the Roman Empire and its far-flung possessions caused a massive amount of expenditure for military conquest and defense. And the size of the army and the bureaucracy both grew astoundingly. There was apparently also a population decline, along with the high defense costs and military costs were high taxes, and emperors had to tax people more, squeeze more and more from them, and eventually even to debase the coinage, to bring on inflation to try to stop this. And of course, as all empires do, eventually they get a little stale. So what happens is in the 3rd century or so, there was a growth of new ideas, like, for example, Christianity. Christianity is formed within the Roman Empire. It's very much influenced by it. in a whole lot of ways, and it was in the midst of the crisis situation of the overbearing Roman occupation of Jerusalem, of the rest of Palestine, of Israel, whatever you want to call it. I'm not making a political statement here, but whatever you want to call that area, occupied, by the Romans, who interfered to a great extent with religion if it got political. Jesus was seen by the Romans as a revolutionary, a guy who was going to overthrow their rule, and the Hellenized Jews like King Herod, defending the emperor's, the Romans' interest against their own people. Even Saul of Tarsus was a Hellenized Jew. But among this came Jesus of Nazareth, who was a threat to a lot of interest in a lot of ways, and of course Christianity became a very influential set of ideas and religion in the Roman Empire, that it became an alternative to both the official Roman religion and the pagan cults, and also to Judaism, which to many people in that period was seen as kind of collaborationist in some way. Some of it was, not all of it. There are different kinds of Judaism in all areas, in all eras, I guess I should say. But Christianity became, in a large part, a ideology, a belief system for the outcasts in the Roman Empire, and it really did. But eventually, as we'll see through an astounding series of events, Christianity actually becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire, because so many people are rallying around it, because it had a message that people really responded to. Christianity was not a specific religion. It was a universal religion. It was for all mankind, not just for Jews or Gentiles or whatever. Christianity was an absolutist idea. It is, in the sense that it asked people to give up belief in other gods and faiths, and to convert, and even in the early days to take on a Christian name, how our first name comes about in a large way. So Christianity, the pressure from within, and the taxes and the corruption and the pressure from without, from the barbarian tribes, especially the Germanic tribes like the Goths. The Caesar had taken care of the Celts and the Gauls, but now the Germanic peoples, the Franks, the Goths, the Alemanni, people like this were starting to break through the Roman Empire, and it does lead in the end to a situation where Rome spirals out of control. It cannot defend itself anymore. There's constant reorganizations and reconstructions, and more or less they work. Most astounding one is probably under Constantine, who actually makes Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire, even though he doesn't convert himself till he's on his deathbed. But Constantine is able to use Christianity to get allegiance and to unite Rome, which had split, into two different factions. So Christianity becomes a way to hold the Roman Empire together. But in the end, however, in the 5th century, the barbarian invasions cannot be defended anymore against. And so barbarians invade Rome, and that, along with other problems like plague, climate change, lead poisoning, soil exhaustion, decline in manpower, corruption, growing poverty, tax burdens, all these sorts of things, many more that we could list, all come together with these barbarian invasions to result in the fall of Rome. And Rome literally did collapse from within before it collapsed from without. So Rome becomes a warning of human ambition and human grandeur and human self-deception. So we look back towards to Rome and to Greece to learn lessons from the past, and the Roman culture and the Greek culture do become very influential and very part of that Western canon, as we'll see when we get to later ages, when people look back and see what happened in the past and how we should do it better in the future. But for now, of course, it's important to note that Rome is gone, and the world comes into a period that are sometimes called the Dark Ages. We will have some reason to dispute that, however, as we will see in chapter 6 and subsequent chapters in our textbook.